All right, let's talk about one of the most famous images in all of psychology, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've definitely seen it, that iconic pyramid that seems to explain, everything about why we do what we do. But today, we're going to see that there is so much more to this story than just a simple triangle. And you probably know the classic rundown, right? At the very bottom, you've got your basic survival stuff: food, water, sleep. Then you climb up to safety and security. Once that's covered, you get to love and belonging, then esteem and respect, and finally, you reach the peak: self-actualization. It all looks like a very neat and tidy ladder to becoming your best self. But what if I told you that this simple step-by-step pyramid we all know isn't quite what Abraham Maslow himself actually described? What if the real story is way more flexible, a lot more complex, and honestly, so much more interesting? So, that's what we're going to do. We're going to peel back the layers of this famous pyramid. Let's dig into what Maslow really said and separate the popular myth from the actual psychological reality of his original ideas. Okay, so this brings us to the number one misconception, that the hierarchy is some kind of rigid ladder you have to climb one rung at a time. Maslow himself said, no, the order is not fixed. For some people, for instance, self-esteem might actually be more important than love. They might feel like they need to become a strong, respected person first, and that's the path to finding love, which totally flips the order of the pyramid. And here's another huge point. It's not an all or nothing game. You don't have to be 100% satisfied with one need before the next one even starts to show up. Maslow described it more like a gradual emergence. So think of it less like flipping a light switch on and off, and more like a dimmer, where one need slowly fades as another gets brighter. In fact, Maslow kind of threw out some numbers just to illustrate this exact point. He imagined that an average person might be, say, 85% satisfied in their physiological needs, 70% in safety, but maybe only 50% in love, 40% in esteem, and just 10% in self-actualization. It's a great way to show that we are all just a mix of satisfied and unsatisfied needs all at the same time. And maybe the most surprising thing of all, Maslow believed that for most of us, these fundamental drives are working away unconsciously. It's kind of like an iceberg, right? The motivations we can actually see and talk about are just the tiny tip of what's really driving us from deep down below. All right, so with all that in mind, let's zoom in on a few of these needs. We need to get past the simple labels and really understand what Maslow meant when he talked about moving from basic survival all the way up to self-fulfillment. Let's kick things off with safety. Now, this isn't just about being safe from, a lion chasing you. It's this deep, deep desire to reduce uncertainty in our lives. We crave a world that is predictable, a world that is orderly, a world where we can feel secure and free from that feeling of chaos. And you can see this playing out absolutely everywhere. It's why a little kid thrives on a consistent bedtime routine. It's why adults want jobs with tenure and some protection. It's why we open savings accounts and buy all kinds of insurance. At its core, it's our fundamental preference for things we know over things we don't. Okay, moving up a level, let's look at the esteem needs. This is all about our need for a stable, high evaluation of ourselves. But it's not just one simple thing. It's actually a dual need that comes from two very different places. So here's the crucial breakdown. Esteem has two sides. First, there's the internal part. That's our desire for strength, for competence, for independence. That's self-respect. But then there's the external part, our desire for a good reputation, for recognition from other people. Maslow argued that the healthiest kind of self-esteem is built on earned respect, not just fleeting fame. We really need both that internal validation and that external validation to feel truly confident. And that, of course, brings us to the very top of the pyramid, self-actualization. Now, this isn't about being perfect or famous or anything like that. It's much simpler. It's the desire for self-fulfillment, that inner drive to become everything you are capable of becoming. Maslow himself put it perfectly with this line: what a man can be, he must be. If you're a musician, you have to make music. If you're an artist, you have to paint. It's all about fulfilling your own unique potential, whatever that happens to be. But as inspiring as all this is, the theory is not without its issues. Over the years, science has found a few, let's call them cracks in the pyramid's foundation. So let's give it a quick reality check. So the first big critique is all about methodology, how he came up with the theory. Maslow didn't run these huge experiments.
He developed his ideas by studying the biographies of 18 people that he himself personally decided were self-actualized. It was based entirely on his own opinion, which, of course, is really open to bias.
And that leads right into the second big problem, sample bias. That small group of 18 people he studied, it was overwhelmingly made up of highly educated white men, like Albert Einstein and Abraham Lincoln. That makes it really tough to say that his findings apply to everybody, especially women or people from totally different cultures whose path to fulfillment might look very, very different. And finally, we come back to that strict hierarchical order. We just know this isn't always true. I mean, think about artists like Van Gogh, who lived in poverty his entire life. His basic needs were far from met, but you could absolutely argue he was pursuing self-actualization through his art. In fact, a huge modern study from 2011 really put this to the test. Researchers surveyed over 60,000 people across 123 countries, and what they find? Well, the good news for Maslow is that yes, universal human needs do seem to exist across all cultures. But the bad news for the pyramid? The strict order was not supported by the data at all. People were getting their needs met in all sorts of different orders. As Ed Diner, one of the study's authors, put it so simply, even when we are hungry, for instance, we can be happy with our friends. You don't have to check off one box on the list to get the benefits from another one. So if the theory has all these flaws, why are we still talking about it? Why has it stuck around for so long? Well, because despite its scientific weaknesses, the pyramid has an incredibly powerful and lasting legacy. Its biggest impact, by far, has been in education. Maslow's ideas completely shifted the focus to a more holistic view of the student. I mean, it seems so obvious to us now, but his work was groundbreaking in reminding educators that a tired, hungry, or scared student can't possibly focus on learning. It really pushed for the idea that for students to reach their full potential, they first need to feel safe, accepted, and valued. So while the pyramid might not be the rigid ladder we all thought it was, its core ideas are still unbelievably relevant. And that really leaves us with one final question to think about. If life isn't just a simple climb up a pyramid, then what does your own unique, flexible path to becoming everything you can be actually look like?